I'm out of Szczepaniec. I'm the new extension entomologist. Still call myself new. I'm going to ride that one as long as I can. I've been here for a year and a little bit. Came from Texas where I worked on crops a little bit, and then I lived in Maryland before that. My crazy last name actually comes from Poland, and you can forget you ever saw it actually. Don't worry about pronouncing it. If you could just remember that I'm Ada, not Ada, that would be perfect. That's all I'm asking, just Ada. That's cool. So before I go into IPM and talk a little bit about the two crops I'm focusing on, which are alfalfa and wheat, I'd like to hear where you guys are from, because there might be something you'd like me to cover based on your location. So it sounds like a lot of crops, you're covering a lot of crops, and that's cool. I always like to hear that, because diversity is something that is important in IPM and insect pest management using integrated methods. So rotation and diversity are the two main things. So I always love to come here and look at the stuff that Dwayne is doing here, because he always has a lot of diversity here. He always is doing things that are, introducing a little bit more diversity, and we do care about that, because monocultures and keeping everything the same and doing the same thing over and over is not good for sustainable pest management, okay? So some of you do grow corn, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about corn and just one aspect of it. Before I go into it, I start this by telling people what IPM really is. It's integrated pest management. IPM is something that, the term we throw around a lot, but we need to sort of start saying it out loud and sort of like as a term that it is. Integrating different ways to manage pests. IPM is not about organic production. Doesn't mean no pesticide, doesn't mean, only only organic pesticides. It just means using pesticides when you reach thresholds. Not doing preventative applications of pesticides, insecticides mixed with herbicides just because it's cheap, because it's $2 an acre. That was my first question I got when I moved here. Why not? It's only $2 an acre. Yeah, well, it's cheap right now. You're going to pay for it later. Even if it won't be this season, it's going to be later on. So integrated pest management is about rotation. It's about managing weeds. It's very important for insects, and there's one pest that I'm going to talk about in wheat for which it is crucial, and there's nothing else you can do except for managing volunteer wheat. So it's one of those things that our grandfathers, our great grandfathers, maybe your fathers, that's how they farmed. They integrated these different methods to manage pests using pest biology against them as a weapon. So corn rootworm. Unexpected BT failure to corn rootworm. Have you guys dealt with that, seen that?
Not here,
over east, yeah. So there's something about this area that makes it always will be a little safer for corn rootworms. Corn rootworm does not like dry, sandy soils. It's abrasive to its cuticle. These things are really tiny when they're first hatched. So this abrasion from the sand, from the dry soil, damages their cuticle and dries them out. So there's the further west you go, the lesser of a problem it's going to be. And Dwayne has never had it here. He has wonderful soil health here, of course. He's doing it the right way in many different respects. And he's no-till, right? So he's preserving all the beneficial fungi and all the beneficial insects that are feeding on these things. So that's another story too. But the fact that this is a drier soil, that's more abrasive, sandier, rootworms don't like that. So back east, we're starting to see some issues. There's this eastern edge along I-29, and it's might be moving a little west, might not be moving totally out to here because of these different soils. But we're seeing issues, we're seeing failure. So BT traits for LEPs are working beautifully, right? They're working beautifully, they're still fine because it's a high dose toxin expressed in kernels and leaves. So plants express a lot of proteins in those plant parts. So there's lots of toxins in these plant parts. So the Lepidopteran pest, that European coneboard, chew on that tissue, they're gonna die, they're knocked out. That works beautifully. With corn, with roots, it's a different story. Plants don't express many proteins in that part, and BT, all that is just a naturally occurring bacterial toxin that's been put into put into corn plants so it's expressed naturally. So it's going to get expressed where plants express a lot of proteins, like leaves and kernels, but roots don't make that many proteins. So that toxin is low dose, and that's where we run into trouble. Okay, so low dose. Low dose means we're not killing everybody as nicely as we are with lab pests. So we have a lot of these issues with fast development of resistance. BT corn traits for rootworms have not been around as long as lab traits, right? And we're seeing issues already. So if you want to grow a lot of corn, what do you do? And what have you been telling your clients to go with if they've had issues? Insecticides, NBT, probably. A lot of guys are doing that. So the first thing to do, and that's a sweet part of this story, is that corn rootworms are actually very easy to control. All you have to do is go away from corn for 1 year. Rotate to another crop. They're specialists in corn. They need those corn roots to survive. It's not like they can walk over a ditch to some other field and get into that. They can't do that. They have very short period of time when they first hatch to find those roots and latch onto them. No corn roots, no corn rootworm survival, okay? So you can rotate. The rotation is very important for at least 1 year. And we can do that to soybeans in a lot of parts of South Dakota, and that's our saving grace, okay? So, first of all, if you have a problem, you've had a problem with this pest in the past, you're going to know. You might, if you have clients who have had continuous corn for 3 years in a row, have used the same BT hybrid, and have seen some beetles in their fields, that's a high-risk field. You might see some issues there. So that's something to pay attention to. What to do? First thing to do is, you've got to rotate. That does wonders for populations of these pests. It's going to take care of them really nicely. What's next? So we got together scientists from different universities last fall and devised this plan that includes a pretty hefty a number of years that you can grow corn. So you rotate to soybeans for 1 year. You can go to non-BT corn the next year. And that might be an issue because you might not be able to find that non-BT seed, right? But because you've rotated away, you won't have any rootworms. So you can go to non-BT corn. Third year, you can stick to non-BT corn, and if you had beetles the year before, that would be a good time to apply in-furrow insecticides. Only if you had beetles the previous year, okay? And then year 4 and 5, you can stick to corn. You can go to BT corn, preferably stacked. We like stacked better. That's a little bit more diversity in terms of toxins that it delivers. So there's a way to do it that maximizes corn production. And sort of is more sustainable and long-term approach, okay? Because going with BT and nuking them with pesticides and going and beetle bombing later, it's just more toxins, it's just more pesticides, it's just going to be faster resistance development, okay? So that's something to consider too. And you guys are getting these books, right? And when you look through them, at different pesticides that are registered for different crops and different pests, you might think you have all of this arsenal of chemicals to choose from. But if you trace back to what classes of pesticide they belong to, what specific aspects of insect physiology they target, there are not that many kinds we have. We have pyrethroids, we have organophosphates, carbamates are still in use, nasty as they are. Neonicotinoids, there's and most people go with pyrethroids and organophosphates because they're the cheapest, right? That's the reality of life. So you really don't have that much of a diversity in terms of pesticides. That's why it's important to stick to IPM. Apply pesticides only when it's necessary. When you've scouted out, when you have these insects, when you reach thresholds, that's the time when you apply pesticides. That's going to ensure that we have that technology available to manage pests for as long as possible, because it's not that easy and not that fast to develop new pesticides. Okay, it takes time, it takes good research, it takes lots of testing, and it takes a long time. So that's something to consider. Okay, do you guys have any questions about that? Yeah. Feel free to interrupt me, and if you have any questions or comments, perspective from your side, I'm always happy to hear that. Okay. So lots of alfalfa producers. What's your main alfalfa issue? Weevils, yep, weevils. And we have wonderful field behind me here. I really love that place. I always liked alfalfa. It's a wonderful crop because it's very diverse. You know, it flowers, so it enhances beneficial insect population because they have that floral resource. But weevils are the main thing, the main focus there when we're talking about pest management in alfalfa. So you guys have been around for a while. Have weevils always been a problem? So what I'm hearing, I don't know if you have a different perspective here, that it's actually more like, you know, 5-7 years. That's actually where the weevils have become a huge issue, where they've been around always, but when you think about spraying and how much spraying they required lately, it is about 5-7 years back. Is that sort of, you'd agree with that? So what is it? What happened about 5 years ago that we suddenly, this non-pest, and it's not like the soybean aphid, which is an introduced pest. When that happens, that's a different story. That's like a new whole niche for that insect. There's natural enemies, that's a new resource. They usually do outbreak and it's an issue. That's a different story though. Alfalfa weevils are not invasive. So what happened? There's some thoughts that elimination of these little guys that I'm going to pass around is one of the factors that led to the outbreaks of weevils that we see now. And one of the ideas is that we basically, with the hay prices going up so much, people worry about it so much more, and they've started spraying much more, okay? And when you spray, these little things are really sensitive to pesticides. You kill them off. So I'm going to pass around this guy. And that's the bigger of them, okay? So take a look at this guy here. If you can imagine a really tiny yellow-jacket wasp, okay? Really tiny. That's the same order, okay? Hymenoptera, same thing. What these guys do, they're really good at finding their prey. They have really evolved very sensitive olfaction system, so they sort of can smell their host. They find their host, in this case weevils, they lay an egg on them, and then the larvae chews inside the weevil and feeds on it and it kills it basically. There's tons of different kinds of these wasps. They attack caterpillars of all sorts and beetle larvae. They attack aphids, leaf hoppers, tons of things. And they're really tiny. So that was a big guy. Let me show you what the smaller ones of them look like. And there's actually even smaller than this, okay? So they will look like, if you have good eyes, you will see wings a little bit on these. If you don't, then they'll just look like a couple specks of dirt for you. But when we go out there and we sweep, I might be pointing to a little dot in your net. I'm going to be telling you that's a parasitoid wasp. You have to take my word for it, okay? They're incredibly abundant. They do a lot of good stuff for weevils, as I said, but also for aphids. There's tons of aphids that get parasitized by these guys. Different species, probably not the ones that I'm passing around, but the end result is the same. The larva feeds on the inside of the aphid, and it causes swelling and this expansion of the aphid. So they have this very characteristic papery look. We call them aphid mummies. They're very easy to tell. And then once the larva finishes development, it chews out its exit hole. So it does this. It just goes around like that. So it's a perfectly neat hole. It's beautiful, perfectly neat chewed out hull, and then it just flips the flap open and flies off and does its thing again. So they're really abundant. They're all over the place. They're very generalist sometimes. They will attack a couple different kinds of prey, but they're very sensitive to pesticides. So one school of thought is that we've eliminated them when we started spraying so much because they're very sensitive to insecticides. Another idea is that with the recent climate change, there may be some asynchrony between these guys and their host, the weevils. They're just not synced as well as they were before. So that's another thing to look at. So one of the things that my program is going to look at is scouting for these things and surveying fields and sort of tracking their population and life history traits and see if they have them in South Dakota, what they're doing, and how they're still able to provide that service that they do for us. So those are the parasitoid wasps that attack them. And something to think about before spraying pesticides. And that takes me to the second topic, which is scouting for alfalfa weevils. So how do you guys scout for these guys? Anybody using sweep net? Yeah, sweep net? So I'm going to show you guys, the sweep net is one way to do it, and I'm going to show you another way, which is the way I prefer to scout for these guys, and I'm going to explain to you why. So first of all, my method, the bucket method, includes air conditioning, and whenever you can scout in air conditioning, that's a good thing to do. So sure, you can fly an airplane that's air conditioned too, probably, right, in some way. But so whenever you sweep for alfalfa weevils, when you take the sweep net out there, when you're walking into your field, so you always want to walk way in, you don't want to do the edge. The edges are funny things happen at the edges of fields. So to get a good feel for what's happening, you want to walk well into your field, and you're sweeping with your net. You're probably collecting stuff from hundreds, if not thousands, of alfalfa stems, okay? So you go in there and you sweep, and you open that sweep net, and it's going to be green with weevils, probably. You have a good chance for it. And you're going to get all nervous, and you're going to freak out, and you're going to go get your airplane, right? Or not even, right? So that's one way to do it. And the way I'm going to show you involves a more precise way to sample for these guys. You walk in there, you walk in a big U pattern, and you collect about 30 stems. You clip them at the bottom of the plant. Clip those 30 into your bucket and come back to the truck where it's air conditioned. In there, you can grab your stems out. You can grab a couple at a time, 4 or 5, beat them against the side of the bucket, and the larvae are going to dislodge and end up at the bottom of the bucket, okay? And then you want to measure the stem height of your alfalfa and look at those tables that you have in the handouts in there. Figure out how many beetles per 30 stems at the plant height, and that's your threshold. So it's not overwhelming like you have with the sweep net, where you're looking at it and it's all green and moving around. It's more precise. Another question I get a lot about alfalfa pests are aphids, because people do the same thing. They'll go in and they'll sweep, and the nets are just crawling with aphids. And the aphid that you see in alfalfa is the big pea aphid. And you might think that there's time to do something, but it's not. The threshold for pea aphid is something like 100 per stem, but again, it's per stem. So you get a little overwhelmed when you look in your net, but then when you sort of consider how many you have per stem, you're probably well under. So that's one thing to consider. The guide you do have to sweep for in alfalfa is the potato leaf hopper. So those guys, I saw a couple back here yesterday, not too many. Maybe we'll see one, maybe not. There's another handouts in there for you about the potato leaf hopper. These are teeny tiny hemipteran pests. They have a sucking mouth part, wedge-shaped, very small, very light, pale green, pale yellow. They hop, hence the leaf hopper in their name. These guys, the direct damage they do just from feeding is not that bad on a plant at all. It's the toxic properties in their saliva. They cause hopper burn. So that's when you see that triangular shape at the tip of the alfalfa leaves, they turn yellow. When you see that, you've lost some yield already, so that's a little too late. That's why that guy is kind of tricky. You have to get in there, and you have to scout for that guy continually, basically every week, and use a sweep net for that one. So the sweep, to sample for that guy, you take some 10 sweeps. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate sweeping. I had some guys here yesterday. I thought sweeping was easy, but apparently I had some guys lightly grazing the plant, so I'm going to demonstrate how it's done before we get out there. But you sweep, and then you swing the net a couple more times to make sure the insects all end up at the bottom of your sweep net. Grab it from the bottom, open slowly. They're going to be a little dazed. Not everybody's going to fly out and jump out at once. They're going to be a little dazed, and you open it slowly. You'll see them in there. And they do this kind of funny side walk before they're going to jump too. So you're going to open it, they do a little side walk, kind of cute, and then jump out. Very, very easy to tell kind of those insects too. The last guy I wanted to talk about in alfalfa is blister beetles. Yeah, some, and it's a huge issue. It can be a huge problem too, especially horse owners. I think they cause some trouble. Maybe last year was a big year for them. So blister beetles are actually a double-edged sword. We want them and we don't want them. The larvae of these guys are beneficial. They actually feed on grasshopper egg pods. That's why they were a big issue last year, because we had so many grasshoppers. So the larvae feed on the grasshopper egg pods, so that's a good thing. We do want them around. But then the adults, which are attracted to blooming alfalfa because they feed on the nectar, not so much. They get their names because they have cantharidin, that defensive compound that they exude when they're disturbed, when they're threatened. And that's called a blister beetle because it causes quite a blister. If you get sprayed with that stuff, that's an impressive blister. I don't have my dramatic pictures. I forgot to grab my dramatic blister beetle burn pictures, but it's pretty bad. So with the livestock, it can kill livestock too, but it's usually horses that we worry about because people have personal relationships with their horses. Basically, it's a different relationship. So when something is exposed to hay that has cantharidin in it, it can burn their digestive tract. It can kill a horse as little as I think 0.5 milligram per kilogram of body weight of a horse. That's a deadly dose, so it's a pretty big deal. Cantharidin, that stuff in the beetles, it's a little bit like poison ivy oils in terms, in a sense that it stays forever. It's hard to get rid of it. Once it's there, it's just there. So usually not a problem in first cutting of hay. So that's why people tell you sometimes to buy first cutting hay for their horses. And they show up later. And this is the guy you do want to check edges of your fields for. And there are some here, but I found more in the blooming alfalfa that's between this field and the wheat field. So they definitely are attracted to these blooming plants. What to do? There are some insecticides that are registered for them. You can sure spray, but what's going to happen once you spray? You're going to kill them, and they're going to end up in that field probably, right? So the better thing to do is not to spray. Cut your hay, but don't crimp. Once you crimp, you squish them, they end up in there. The cantharidin is in your hay. It's a done deal. So cut, don't crimp. Once you do that, the beetles are not interested in your field anymore because the blooms are not there to feed on. They're going to leave on their own. Okay? So kind of easy to take care of. Any questions about those? They were a huge deal last year, but it was because of the grasshoppers. This year, grasshoppers, USDA APHIS puts out a map that predicts sort of what kind of a risk of grasshoppers we're going to have, and it doesn't look too bad for us this year. There's just a couple of places, northwest corner, far south, that are in moderate risk, not even severe. And I think last year, a chunk of a western part of the state was in severe risk for grasshoppers, so this year might not be so bad. But they're all over the field here behind me, so I'm going to show you guys what they look like. They're very characteristic. The one that we have here, the most common one, although I did find 2 species here yesterday, the most common one is ash gray blister beetle. But they all have the same body shape. They might come in a little smaller or larger sizes, but the body shape is very characteristic. Small beady head, small beady pronotum that follows the head, and then antennae, sort of, you can see the segments on the antennae too, and then the big body, the abdomen, sort of bigger. So very characteristic, easy to tell. We're going to make sure that you guys see some in the field back here. Okay, wheat. You guys, what's the biggest thing in wheat these days?
Is there any wheat stem sawfly in South Dakota?
Oh, yay! That's on my list of things to talk about. We can talk about stem sawfly first. Yes, the answer is yes. We have wheat stem sawfly in South Dakota. It comes from, it's a huge deal in Montana, and it's moving from Montana out here. And there's a couple years ago, since, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, guys are telling me, huge issues in that corner, northwest corner of South Dakota, Bison, Ralph area. This guy, the wheat stem sawfly, it's a hymenoptera, so it's a wasp, and it looks a little bit like a yellow jacket, but it doesn't have that thin waist like yellow jackets do. And it bores, the larvae bore into the stem of wheat. And it can cause stem breakage, but the biggest issue with that pest that it causes lodging of wheat, you can't harvest it. So it's been an issue in that corner of the state, northwest corner of the state. We have a trial there where we're testing a couple different varieties of winter wheat with solid stem that might tolerate this pest a little better. So we're testing that. In terms of spring wheat varieties, not that big of a choice. There's one variety, Mott, that takes a huge yield loss when you don't have huge yield penalty when you don't have that pest. So it's a little bit trickier with spring wheat. But we're starting to see it, and there's some people who think that's going to be the new emerging pest in South Dakota.
It's not just the northwest corner, by the way. It's the whole everywhere where there's wheat production.
Yeah, yeah, but it's been, in terms of acreage that was lodged, I hear that was the corner when that's happening.
There's not a lot of wheat production in the northwest corner, but
That's where it's lodged. So
maybe
whiteheads.
that's because there's not very much wheat, so there's more bugs. They all just
They make a bigger deal out of it, maybe. So whiteheads in wheat, have you seen that too? Which one is that? Do you know? That's the stem maggot. Yep, yep. So that we have two stem boring pests in wheat we worry about, and if you see the whiteheads that are easily pulled out of the plant, that wheat stem maggot, and that's actually a fly. That one is even trickier. We don't have any resistant varieties we can use for that one. So at least with wheat stem sawfly, there's some potential. But in terms of wheat stem sawfly and its impact, that's potentially going to be the new emerging pest. So we're going to see how those varieties hold up. And you know, with everything that has a resistance or greater tolerance for a pest, there's always going to be a yield trade-off. The plant, you know, it's like with any resources. You can't do both things at the same time. You can't be a great producer and a better defendant. It's sort of a limiting resource principle. So there is some yield penalty, and it's a matter of assessing which variety has the least of it and still protects you from the wheat stem, from the pest. It's gonna take a couple of years. This year was kind of tough for wheat. To do these experiments up there, and spring wheat's actually looking worse than winter wheat for some reason in our plots. But so it's going to be a couple years, but we'll see what we find. We have our winter wheat breeder, Bill Brzezinski. So these are varieties that were, tested by him, I think, in 1 year. So we'll continue with that work and see what we find out. It's definitely tricky with these stem boring insects. You can't apply pesticides because you can't get in there. The adult control is not really feasible. They fly over a 3 to 6 week period, and they're tough to hit and they're tough to pinpoint, so that's not recommended either. So that's kind of going to be a tricky one to control for certain. Aphids. Yep. So I've been getting phone calls about aphids lately, and the one that is causing a lot of issues right now is the English grain aphid. And when we're devising these or talking about the scouting protocols, there's the precise way to do it, and then there is a quick and easy, less precise, but quick and easy way to do it. So I always try to present both, because I know the reality of life is there's tons of acreage to cover always, and any sort of scouting is better than no scouting at all. So in terms of aphids and wheat, the easy and quick way to do it is, about 12-15 aphids per plant when you're scouting. And then every aphid that we have here has its own individual threshold based on the species and based on the maturity of wheat to look at. So one of your handouts has that too. The 3 aphids we have here we worry about is green bug, bird cherry oat aphid, and then English grain. And they're may sound like they're a big deal to learn, but they really are not. The only thing you need is your handy hand lens, and they're kind of easy to tell apart. Green bugs are smallest. They're teeny tiny aphids. They like to hang out on leaves, and they have reduced cornicles. So cornicles are those 2 tailpipes that stick out of aphid bodies. So people think that they use those cornicles to produce, to exude honeydew, but that's not where the honeydew comes out of. Honeydew comes out of their butts. And the cornicles are used to emit pheromones, and most of those pheromones are actually alarm pheromones, like there's a predator around, let's drop off the plant kind of a pheromone. So that's what they're for. So the green bug has really reduced cornicles. Bird cherry oat aphid, which that's too many words for a name, I think, but that's what it is, has this darker stripe going across its abdomen. And the English grain aphid, I think, is the easiest one. I don't know why it was easiest for me to remember. English grain's like a delicate English lady. I don't know, it looks kind of dainty to me. But she's got really long black cornicles, easy to see them. And the joints are black too, so it's kind of easy to see. She's got these dark joints. And they're all over that field here, so you guys are gonna see a lot of them out there. So seed treatments. For insecticide seed treatments for wheat. You guys do those? Winter wheat? Spring wheat? So, winter wheat. Goes in the ground sometimes a little early. If the guys have a lot of acreage to plant, you just got to get in there early and get them planted. Aphids might still be around. That young wheat plant is really susceptible to barley yellow dwarf, which all these aphids transmit, so you're worried about that. And yeah, I'd say seed treatment is a thing to do, way to go. But spring wheat, what are you trying to protect your spring wheat from? And you have to remember that the seed treatments that go in on the seed, it's a small dose of pesticide. These things are active for 30, maybe 40 days, something like that. So we have aphids now, maybe they started maybe a week ago, and it's well past that 30-day period, right? So that's something to consider. And my colleague, I think you must have met Emmanuel Biamakama by now. So we have a project where we're going to look at these seed treatments for spring wheat specifically, both fungicide and insecticide seed treatments, to evaluate if they're protecting you from the pest that you're applying them against. I'm assuming that's aphid. What's the cost of that application? And then there's some claims that these insecticide seed treatments give you a yield bump even in absence of pest and disease pressure. We're going to evaluate how they do if there are no bugs and no diseases. So that's another research project that we're going to do and evaluate that and tell you what we find out in a couple of years. And it's always good to get that data from more than 1 year. Year to year, lots of variabilities. This is a weird year. Last year was a weird year, so I'm still waiting for a regular year here. So we'll see how that goes. Something to consider though. Just like it is with alfalfa weevil and aphids in wheat, going out there with your sweep net and sweeping the wheat, we're going to do that. You're going to see how many aphids you find. It's incredible how many you see, and then you get all nervous and then you want to spray. So wheat and aphids in wheat are another pest that you want to actually scout by looking at plants, not looking at your sweeping. Sweeping those plants, those plots, is a good thing to do to figure out what sort of natural enemies you have, what sort of beneficial insects you have. And we're going to see a lot today. You're going to see basically all the major ones that you're ever going to probably see in the ag field. So that's a wonderful site here. So look at individual plants, not sweeping samples. And guys have called me, said, they walk into their fields and their pants are sticky with honeydew. And you sort of don't have to even count at that point, you know what to do. But if you're close to threshold, at threshold or close to threshold, and you have a lot of natural enemies, maybe it's worth to give it a couple more days. Come back again and see if the populations are still increasing, your aphids are still growing, maybe the predators are not keeping up with them. Maybe that's a good thing to do, despite the fact that they're there. I also wanted to mention, since we're sort of talking about aphids and diseases that aphids vector, I wanted to mention another one, which is wheat streak mosaic virus. So when I did the Dakota Lakes field day last year, went on a wagon with the guys and I asked them if they have issues with wheat streak mosaic virus, and Dwayne told me never to ask people that because it's like asking if they have any venereal diseases or something. It's way too personal to ask apparently. So I'm not going to ask, but I know it's around. I know it's a big issue. And that virus is actually vectored by a mite, by wheat curl mite. And I have another good news for you. You don't have to scout for that guy. You don't have to know what it looks like. You don't have to go look for it. You don't even have to apply pesticides. You shouldn't. You shouldn't apply miticides. You can't kill it with any of that stuff. The only way to control wheat curl mite is to destroy volunteer corn and keep the field volunteer corn free for at least 2 weeks before putting wheat in. This mite, which looks really bizarre, it's spindle shaped, has 4 legs, and it's really a weird looking thing. They don't like really hot weather. They don't like mature plants. So when wheat matures, when it gets too hot, they move to their oversummering hosts, their wild grassy host or volunteer wheat, and that's when they hang out and wait for you to plant wheat so they can move into your new crop. Okay, so volunteer wheat free destruction at least 2 weeks prior to planting. It's the thing to do. If your neighbor is not so good at taking care of that, the wind might, carry those mites over, and that's an issue too. These are cheap sweep nets. That's what we have for you. Sorry, but they work okay. Just make sure to keep it down. This ring comes off, and then the sweep net comes apart. So keep it down here. So you need some healthy muscle to sweep, okay? And it's not a delicate touching the grasses. No, no, no. You have to move fast because the insects are moving fast, and you have to be undulating kind of high. Okay, I don't want to kick up too much dirt. And then swing a couple more times to get the insects into the bottom of your net. Grab at the bottom, and then you can slowly open and see what's in there. Okay, it's kind of easy. So the way we're going to do this, and before we go, actually, because I just wanted to pass something around because we might not find this guy around. Just want to pass a cool find here and ask you what you guys think that might be. We will find different life stages of this one. But yep, I found, so this is a pupa of a ladybug, okay. We're gonna see a lot of larvae, we're gonna see a lot of adults, but I wanted to show you this guy. I actually got pictures of these guys all over some plant, I can't remember what it was, with a question how to kill it, because there are so many of them. So there must be something wrong, and there must be a reason to spray, but that's actually a beneficial. Lady beetles, like all beetles, come through. They go through complete metamorphosis. They have a larval stage. We're going to learn it very well because it's all over these fields. And then they go into this resting pupal stage where lots of physiologically complex things are happening in there. So you can imagine how much stuff has to happen for a larva to go from a larva into an adult beetle. So that's kind of what they're doing right now. There's a huge diversity of lady beetles. We have tons of different species, and they have the same sort of body shape, and their larvae have the same body shape too. You will see them all over the fields here. They're sometimes people call them alligator bugs, I think. They have long, slender bodies, and they have long legs. They keep them high off the ground so they can move really fast. They're really good searchers. That's all they do, search around for food. I also have my business cards here if you want to grab one and get in touch with me ever, ask questions. I always welcome that.